Alright, a few of you are having some trouble on the Delta Math, which might also translate over to some trouble on the quiz, so I wanted to go over a couple things from the Delta Math. So I just chose some problems that you guys missed. So one thing I saw is pretty easy to do, but you guys, I did not go over this one. So determine the minimum and maximum value of the following trig functions. So if we look at this trig function, we have an amplitude of 15, and then there's no number over here, so we would have a midline at 0. So if we think about our graph, just a really rough graph, our midline is at 0 right here, and our amplitude up here would be 15. So that would mean from the midline we go up 15 to the maximum point, so our maximum value would be 15. And from the midline we'd go down 15, so our minimum value would be negative 15. Okay. Another question similar to it, this one does have a midline that has changed. So for this, we really just have to worry about the amplitude and the midline. This one does have a period change, but that's not going to affect anything. So, so we have a midline up here at 1, 2, 3, right here, and then we have an amplitude of 2, so we would go up to 2, then back down to the midline, we go down 2, and back up, so it would look like this. So that maximum point would be 5, which is, and actually this would be flipped over because of that negative, but that's not really important right now, which is the midline plus the amplitude, which gives us 5, and then the minimum would be the midline minus the amplitude, so 3 minus 2, which would give you 1. So that's what you're going to think about whenever you do these types of problems. The next thing I was seeing you have trouble with were mostly writing the equations either from the words or the graphs. So here it says write a sine function that has an amplitude of 4, a midline of 3, and a period of 1/3. So amplitude and midline are the easiest. So we know we're going to have y equals amplitude of 4, so 4 sine of something in here, and a midline of 3, so plus 3 over here on the end. Now this one does not have a phase shift, so where we normally have bx plus c, we are not going to have a plus c here because this one does not have a phase shift. So if we think about how we find that period, to find the period, we do 2 pi divided by whatever number's in front of our x, which is our b here. And we want that to equal 1/3. So in order to solve this for that b, we could cross multiply here. So we just got b times 1, which is b. And then we've got 2 pi times 3, which is 6 pi. So that b right there should be 6 pi. So this would be our equation, 4 sine of 6 pi times x plus 3. Let's look at another one like that. This time it's cosine. We're not really going to do much different. We've got a midline, an amplitude, and a period change on this one as well. So we will have y equals, the amplitude is 2, so we'll have 2 cosine of, I do have a period change, no phase shift, so I'm going to put bx in here, midline of 5, so I'm going to do the plus 5. So again, I need to think what number would give me 8 pi for my period. So to find the period, I always do 2 pi divided by the number in front of the x, which right now I don't know what it is. It's just a b. And that's supposed to equal 8 pi. Now, not so easy to figure this out off the top of your head. So put this 8 pi over 1, and you can cross multiply. And so that will give you 8 pi times b, and that's going to equal 2 pi times 1, which is just 2 pi. And you're solving for this b right here, so you would just divide both sides by 8 pi. So b is going to equal, the pi's are going to cancel here, 2 over 8 reduces to 1/4. So that b is going to be 1/4. You might also see that written as x over 4 instead. So let's look at some that you have to do from the graphs. So this particular equation, you've got to find the amplitude, the midline, and the period before you can write the equation. They did ask for a cosine function on this one, which is good because you can see that your y-intercept right here is at a maximum point, which means that our sine graph, the y-intercept is always at a maximum point. So we don't have to shift this graph left or right. There's no phase shift. So in order to find the midline, we're just looking for that line that goes through the middle of the graph, which in this case is -1. So we've got a midline of -1. So it's going to be y equals cosine of something here, not +1 because it's -1, so we'll have -1 right here. And then we want to look for our amplitude because it's the next easiest. Distance from the midline up here to this maximum point is 2, so we'll have a 2 right here. And then let's see, amplitude is 2. Last thing we want to find is the period. And the period of the graph is how long it takes the graph to start repeating. So we've got a maximum point here, and then right here we're back up to another maximum point. So that's one full cycle there. And it took us from 0 to pi for that. So we have a period of pi for this one. So normally we have some number in front of our x. To find the period, we always do 2 pi divided by whatever that number is. And that gives us the period, which in this case is pi. So you might be able to sort of tell here that's going to be 2. Or if not, put this over 1, cross multiply, so you get pi times b equals 2 pi. And then you're going to divide both sides by pi. And so b is going to equal 2. And so we would put a 2 right here, and that would be our equation. Okay, here's a one that asks us to do a sine graph. So if we look at our midline, it would be right here, again at -1. And this is a sine graph. It intersects that y-axis at the midline, so we are not going to have to shift this left or right either. I think most of the ones in Delta Math do not require you to do that phase shift. So if we are looking for our midline, it's -1, which tells me I'm going to have something, something sine of something, and then I'll have a -1 out here for my midline. Again, amplitude for this one's also 2. From the midline up to the maximum point is 2. And then I need to think about the period of this graph. So right here, if I look for how long it's going to take this to repeat, right here we start repeating. So that's from 0 to 8 pi over 3. So 8 pi over 3 is our 8 pi over 3 is our period. Now, this one's definitely one that's difficult to figure out on your own. So we know we've got b times x right here. So if we think about this, to find that period, we do 2 pi over b. And that gives us the period, which this period is 8 pi over 3. So if we want to solve this equation for that b right there, we're going to cross multiply. So we get 8 pi times b, and we multiply here, equals 2 pi times 3, which is going to give us 6 pi. And we want, again, to get this b right here by itself. So we're dividing by 8 pi. Remember, pi is just a number, so it's okay to do this. Pi is not a separate variable. So that pi right there cancels, And so B is going to equal 3/4 whenever we reduce that. So we would take out our B right here, and we would have a 3/4 that goes here. All right, let's look at a couple more of these. This is a pretty good one. This one asks us to do a cosine graph. You can see that we have a maximum point on our y-intercept, so we do not have to shift this to the left or right. Our midline right here, it's kind of strange, is also -1. And our amplitude, the distance from the midline to the maximum point, is 3. So we're going to have y equals 3 cosine of something. I'm going to go ahead and put the bx there, minus 1. And so the period of this graph, if you look from maximum point back up to the next maximum point, we have a period of 6 pi. So our period is 6 pi. And what we want to do here is we want to find what letter B needs to be. So to find period, we always do 2 pi divided by B. And we're going to set that equal to whatever the period actually is, which in this case is 6 pi. And so I can't solve, I'm going to put that over 1 and cross multiply. So I'll get 6 pi times B equals 2 pi. And then I need to get that B right there by itself, so I'll divide by 6 pi. Pi's cancel, so B equals 1/3 there. So we would take out this B and we would put the 1/3, so that would be our answer there. Let me see if there's anything else in particular. Let's do this last one right here. So for this particular problem, my midline right here is at 1, and my maximum point is at 2. So my amplitude is only 1 right here. So this is asked to be a cosine graph. So y would equal, you can put the 1 right here if you want, but you really don't need to. 1 times cosine of, don't know what this is going to be, I'm going to put bx right here. Plus our midline is 1, so we have a plus 1 over here on the end. So if I'm thinking about the period of this graph from maximum point to maximum point, that distance there is 12 pi. So my period for this graph is 12 pi. And so again, 2 pi over b is going to equal 12 pi. So we're going to solve that the same way we've been solving the others. We'll cross multiply. We'll get 12 pi times b equals 2 pi. And we'll divide both sides by 12 pi here to get that b by itself. And b is going to equal, the pi's cancel, 2 over 12 reduces to 1/6. So this b right here is going to become 1/6. So this would be our answer. It'll look a little prettier if you don't put that 1 right there. So this is how we would write our answer. So I hope this helps you a little bit on those. If you have other questions, let me know.